Good afternoon, everyone. It is Thursday, February the 20th, 2020. It is currently 12:22 p.m. Central Time. Well, yesterday, I did a live broadcast for the Theology Central podcast where I informed everyone about the, horrible situation that continues to develop in northern Syria in the Idlib province. I've told everyone that there's a humanitarian crisis developing before our eyes. People are dying. And that story, I've been following the situation in Syria for so many years. It continues to bother me. And so this is what I want to do. I want to share with you something that I heard on the way as I was driving. I'm here at the church, at Victory Baptist Church. And as I was driving here, right before I got in the car, I got a notification from one of my podcast app about a special podcast episode. I don't remember which podcast app I got the notification from. I have so many. But I got a notification of a special podcast episode from Sky News Daily. And when I saw the title, man, it hit me. And I want to share this with you. I'm not going to play the whole thing for copyright reasons. I'm just going to at least tell you about it. I want to preview it so that you will go look it up for yourself. The name, first it's the Sky News Daily. That's the name of the podcast. You can look for that on probably all of your podcast platforms. The name of the episode, it's a special episode, How Can the World Watch as Syrian Children Die in Silence? How can the world watch as Syrian children die in silence? Now, I'm just going to look here really quick. I'm just going to go from all the different podcast apps that I have here. I'm going to look here. Sky News Daily. Okay, there it is. So it's on the Breaker podcast app. I'm going to pull up Pocket Cast. Sky News Daily. Okay, it's on Pocket Cast. So it's on the Breaker podcast app, the Pocket Cast podcast app. I'm going to go to Castbox. Sky News Daily. All right, it's on Castbox as well. All right. And so I'm assuming it's on all. I'm not going to sit there and go through all of them. I'm assuming it's on every single one. So if you have in fact, let me do this. I'll look up one more, because I think this is important. I'm going to go to the Spreaker app. Because that's where I'm doing my live broadcast from. Hopefully it's on there as well. Sky News Daily. Maybe if I spelled it right. Yes, it's on the Spreaker app as well. Sky News Daily is on the Spreaker app as well. So it's on every podcast app. I imagine it's on all of them. I'm sure it's on Google Podcasts and on Apple Podcasts. Please, as soon as you're done hearing this, stop what you're doing and go subscribe to the Sky News Daily podcast and listen to all of this. You need to know what is happening in northern Syria. You need to know what's going on in the Idlib province. You need to know, and we have to ask ourselves, how can the world watch as Syrian children die in silence? Why isn't this a bigger story? Why aren't people bothered? Maybe because the war has been raging so long in Syria that we've grown numb to it and we don't care. And the minute we grow numb and we no longer care to human suffering is the moment we need to stop and ask ourselves, have we stopped truly being a human? Have we truly lost our humanity when people are suffering and dying? And I know it's hard because there's so much suffering and dying around us all the time. It's hard to find the balance of living your life, but yet remaining sensitive to the suffering. But I'm just going to play a little bit of this so that you get an idea, and then I'll wrap this up. So here we go. Here's a little bit of the podcast so that you know, hopefully this will motivate you to go listen to all of it.
Dying in silence is the world ignoring the humanitarian crisis in Syria. Welcome to the Sky News Daily Podcast with me, Dermot Murnaghan. And thanks for joining us as we examine the story beyond the headline. On today's episode...
At just 20 days old, Teslim's already endured unbearable hardship. She's desperately hungry.
They don't want to hear us. They want us to be killed in silence.
Exposing the scale of suffering in Syria.
We go into these camps and these people's houses and these hospitals, and it's very difficult not to feel their pain and to feel their frustration and actually to feel shame as a foreigner coming in from outside.
We'll be talking to Alex Crawford, the only British correspondent to see for herself what's going on inside Idlib. Syria's civil war has been going on for nearly a decade. The United Nations has described the situation in northwestern Idlib province as an unfolding humanitarian catastrophe. Close to 1 million people have been displaced since the start of December. Most of those affected are women and children. And with airstrikes and shelling continuing to devastate towns and villages, these families are running out of places to flee to. Our special correspondent Alex Crawford gained rare access to the city of Idlib. We'll speak to Alex in a moment, but first we can listen to some of what she and her team witnessed.
We're very close to the border now, and there's a long line of cars and trucks already heading towards the border to line up to try to get over. At the moment, the border is closed to refugees or displaced people.
Sarmad itself, where there are a lot of refugees, it was shelled twice for 2 nights. So the people here who have been here for a long time, or who came recently because they're safe, now they decided to go somewhere else. Because Sarmad itself, which is very close to the border, is not safe.
And why do you think they're bombing people close to the border?
They want to push them away. Yeah.
We're just seeing a huge convoy of Turkish military vehicles all heading back towards the border. There seems to be some sort of changeover of troops or something. So we're finally on our way. We're just pulling out of the border point now. That's quite empty at the moment because it's very early. The border hasn't officially opened, and we're just crossing into Syria now. Lucky the weather is in our favour. The sun has come out. It's a little bit warmer. It's a few degrees warm right now. So hopefully that'll mean that we can move around a bit more easily. We're at Al Karama camp right near the border, and this seems to be a new tactic by the Assad regime. They're talking about being bombed and shelled within the camp, which is full of displaced people. The camp is very makeshift. These are people who have moved several times over. One man we spoke to had actually moved his family 10 times and had come here to a place that he thought was safe. And then shells started landing, sending a whole load more families scurrying for safety. And it's not so much that it's done much damage, it's just the terror that it instilled in these people who have moved many, many times over. And frankly, these people are running out of places to run to. There's absolute chaos here as they're trying to hand out some small little bits of food, toys, even slippers and things. The children are going crazy. Hands are up in the air, pushing and shoving everywhere. This woman is telling me that there are 400 people living all together or sleeping in this small room. It's about the size of a small gym. And how many children do you think?
About 250.
About 250 children. You can hear them, a lot of them crying and screaming in the background. There's quite a high incidence of illness, obviously, because there's so many people crammed into a small area. What did she say?
She said that this is just the small kids. The younger ones are other places.
Are outside. My goodness, this sounds incredibly difficult living.
يعني حياة صعبة.
حياة صعبة كتير وبدهم متطلبات كتير وما في إنه دعم لهذا العالم وهذا الشيء لأنه كل يوم عم يجينا شيء جديد كل يوم ناس جداد عالم يعني اليوم العالم إنه حالتها سيئة كتير ما حدا بيجي لهون.
Every day we have newcomers.
It's new people coming every day.
Because of the bad situation, the people come here. They can't stay somewhere else. And we don't have the capacity to receive all these people.
Okay, we're being shown the areas. The actual camp is sort of set up in fields. It's farmers' fields. There's sort of an olive grove down one end. I'm walking through a ploughed bit of land with some sort of crop planted in it. And then there are foundations for houses which have been laid but never been built. And we're right up against the Turkish border. So an area where they really thought they might be safe. Instead, these shells started landing. And we're at another one where there's a small crater. And as I say, it's not so much the damage it's caused, it's the fear and terror that it instilled in people who literally had to up and move again. And there are half-pitched tents that have just been dismantled in a hurry. There's little makeshift toilets with little linen dragged around them to give you a bit of privacy.
Now, again, that comes to us from Sky News Daily. They did a special episode today. You can just listen. It's about a 34-minute episode, and they outline what is happening there in Syria. They got reporters there on the ground. A humanitarian crisis is developing. There's just talk of another military operation happening there in the Idlib province. There's just so many different things you could talk about. And again, we could talk about it from a geopolitical standpoint, a military strategy standpoint. We could make predictions about what's going to ultimately happen. We could talk about, there's just so many different facets. But what we cannot do is forget that there are human beings caught in the middle of this and taking a little bit of time. I know you're busy and I know you've got things to do and I know you may not care, but taking 34 minutes to hear reports where they're outlining what is happening to these people, their situation, the damage, the dying, the suffering, the hardships, and how this could develop into a massive humanitarian crisis of epic proportions. Hopefully that does not occur. Taking a few minutes of your time to hear what's actually happening. Hopefully, A, it will motivate you to pray, and B, hopefully it will motivate those, especially those who are part of large churches, finding ways to help support and do what we can to help in that situation. I know there's always more situations that need help than we can actually help. I understand that. But let's not forget the people in Syria. Let's not forget the children. Let's not forget the people who are fleeing for their lives. 1 million people have been displaced. They have nowhere to go. They can't go into Turkey. They're trapped, and they are trapped, and basically they're now going to sit there and wait to see how the climate is going to impact them and possibly kill them, how disease may spread, starvation, and how they could get caught up in fighting. They've got all kinds of things. They're trapped, and the world is not paying any attention. What's going to happen to them? What's going to happen to all these people? I'm telling you, this story will be forgotten 3 days from now, 24 hours from now. Everybody's going to move on. And while everyone moves on, well, people die. And so I just don't want you to forget about what's going on in Syria. So I just wanted to take a few seconds just to go live and say, hey, situation in Syria is not over. I talked about it yesterday. It's not over today. Here's a special report from Sky News Daily. Please subscribe. Even if you don't want to subscribe to the podcast, go to the episode for today and just listen to the episode for today, and then share it with other people. Share it with your children. Let them know what other children are enduring and facing. Let them know what is happening. Let them understand the horrors of war. Let them understand what is, let them see beyond their little existence and, looking at their phone and complaining about what's for supper. Let them at least understand what's happening in the rest of the world. Use it as an educational, pull out a map of Syria. Let them see where Syria is. Let them see where the Idlib province is in northern Syria. Let them see where the Turkish border is. Let them see what other countries are around them. Help them understand this. Sometimes when it comes to education, we're so worried about, we got this textbook and we've got to cover this and cover this and cover this. Well, wait a minute. When you've got an actual event unfolding before your very eyes, use that for education. You can learn geography, learn a little history about Syria, understand the basics of the current conflict. Let them see, let them hear, use podcasts, use news reports, educate in that way. I think that is very important. So, I'll just stop right there. I just wanted to take a second to bring this to everyone's attention. I would love to play that whole episode of the Sky News Daily, but I don't want to, in any way, unless I could do so, like if I'm going to break in and comment, I can kind of do it that way under the fair use because I'm commenting on it. But I don't really want to do that to a 34-minute report about people suffering. I would rather you go listen to it for yourself. I think it'll have a greater impact. Because this is not about me getting listeners. I'd rather them get the listeners, them get the subscribers, so that you can keep up with what's happening in Syria, the Idlib province, and other parts of the world. There are a lot of other podcasts I would recommend. Sky News Daily. Al Jazeera has a number of podcasts. The BBC has the Global News podcast, has the News Hour podcast. Those will do good. I think it's called World News Roundup. That comes to us from CBS News. They have the World News Roundup and the World News Roundup Late Edition. NPR, PRI The World. NPR, I think, has the world story of the day. We'll keep you up with what's happening in the world. And just listen to news reports that give you information about what's happening outside of your little bubble, your little world, but the whole world, this planet, Earth that we live on. There's a lot of things going on. So just do that. All right. You can email me your thoughts about the situation in Syria if you want to talk about it. newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. And let me just state this again, because the whole purpose of this episode is to get you to go subscribe. Sky News Daily, available on all podcasting platforms. Those who are listening to me on Spreaker, the Spreaker app, you can do a search for Sky News Daily and you can hit the little yellow star and make it a favorite, and you can listen to that episode. Please take the time to do that today. I think it will be very important for you to do so. And as for Christians, pray. Pray. Pray for the adults and the children caught in the middle as the world watches almost in silence as these children in Syria die and as people suffer. Something to think about. God bless.